Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Hopefully everybody can see and hear this. For some reason my OBS was giving me problems. That's why I'm a few minutes late. So I apologize for that. Well, I'm seeing hearts in Hey Grill, hey. All right, so I think you all can see me. Welcome to the show. So, first things first, what am I cooking today? I am cooking pulled pork. It is ready to go on the grill. Well, it's not a grill, it's a smoker. I should know better. So, let me show you all what I got here. So, this is a small one. This is about a 4, maybe almost 5-pound pulled pork. It's pork shoulder, bone in, because I always try to do pork with bone in. It is like half of what I normally do. Normally I do a full Boston butt, but I'm going to try to eat this for dinner tonight, so I can't do a full Boston butt. That would take like 12 hours to cook. So we got a little 5-pound, kind of like little baby pulled pork. We'll make some sliders later. All right, I'm going to pop this in the barbecue. I'll be right back. I'm in my handy dandy food safety gloves. All right. All right. Check my fire's doing pretty good. All right. Yeah, so I'm still in camping gear because I just got back from camping. We were up in the nearby hills, my son and I and some friends. So I didn't have a chance to uncampify myself. So I'm a little camp grody. I apologize, but I have some exciting things I want to talk with you all about today. So the last week, we've seen quite a lot of videos about AMMON MCNEFF and Reckless Ben, and in particular, we saw the body cam footage from Orem where AMMON MCNEFF placed a call into a police officer, had the police officer come to the Bricks and Minifig store in Orem and proceeded to give the officer a litany of what I would describe as mistruths at best. The most outrageous of those being that he found the name of someone named Ben Schneider on the internet who had been convicted of some very bad things. And as a result, AMMON MCNEFF concluded that that other man named Ben Schneider not only must be related to our reckless Ben Schneider, but that it must also necessarily follow that this bad person did bad things to Reckless Ben when he was younger and turned Reckless Ben into a sociopath. The strain and the logic was just absurd. And I will point out that when I go onto the Utah court website and I do a search for cases involving Benjamin Schneider, there are multiple Benjamin Schneiders in Utah. So it was outrageous. On top of that, this same man who owns what is supposed to be a family brand store about Legos where kids come and have birthday parties, talks about wanting to arm his employees and discusses the pros and cons of with the police officer about getting a shotgun. So why do I bring all this up? I bring it up because when I watched that body cam footage, it really made me mad that the depths to which AMMON MCNEFF is willing to go, even if you give Bricks and Minifigs some benefit of the doubt. It doesn't even have to be a lot of benefit. But let's just say that you give them some benefit of the doubt where they're concerned about harassment. So this guy's, shown up. He's been a bit of a nuisance. He's played some pranks and shenanigans at the store in Salem. Put up a sign, tied up, all those things. Visited some stores, dropped a box of rubber chickens off at Josh Johnson's house. If you take all of those things, it in no way adds up to anywhere close to something that needs arming your employees of a freaking kids toy store. And so this man is just so overboard. And I thought now would be the good time to let's dive into the sordid past of AMMON MCNEFF. I mean, we all know a lot of the large beats and why we're not fans of AMMON MCNEFF, but this guy's got a lot of problems. And so what I want to do today is I want to walk through some of those problems. AMMON MCNEFF himself has had several legal problems over the last 12 years. So let's dive into it. Now, I'll orient folks. First, for those of you that are new to the channel, look, I'm the barbecue counselor. I barbecue on the weekends while I do live streams during the week. I make videos about legal issues. I primarily make content about Reckless Ben and the Lego saga, but I also just talk about other issues as well. I am a practicing attorney. I have been a civil litigator for over 15 years. I've tried cases all over the country. And so the whole point of this channel is to provide you the insights I have as a practicing litigator into what I see regarding the Lego issues. So let's orient folks and talk about what we're going to see in some of these documents today. Well, we're going to see multiple instances of AMMON MCNEFF ignoring court orders. We're going to see multiple instances of AMMON MCNEFF refusing or failing to pay bills. We're going to see instances where AMMON MCNEFF failed to pay his taxes. And we're going to see instances where AMMON MCNEFF refused to pay his lawyers. And the lawyers I'm specifically talking about are the lawyers he hired to sue his own father about 7 years ago. So he sued his own dad for control of the company that they jointly owned and managed, tried to get the dad thrown out of the company, and then allegedly, ultimately didn't pay his lawyers who helped him with that. So we're going to get into all of these things because I think the more that we get the public awareness out there about what kind of person this really is, maybe it will encourage some of the Bricks and Minifigs franchisees to demand some change. I see a comment from Colin. Y'all think we don't dig on this channel? We be digging. Yeah. Now, before we get into the documents, I will say I am not going to cover these documents wall to wall. Some of these documents and some of the parts of this story are things that I could spend an hour just by themselves, an entire video, an entire live stream just by themselves. And nobody wants to sit here and watch me pour through legal documents for 3 hours. So I'm thinking we probably have about an hour and a half. We'll see where we go. Throughout this show, I'm going to have to be checking my fire every so often. So let's start getting into it. All right, the first document I want to cover, we're going to go back to the year, let me check here. The court doesn't let me mark up a lot of the documents I get from the court, so let me check. I gotta scroll down to the bottom. December 2014. So what's going on in December 2014? Well, at the time, AMMON MCNEFF was running his father's company called Legally Mine. Legally Mine is a company whose sole mission is to help teach companies how to hide their assets. I am paraphrasing. There have been a lot of extensive videos by other content creators about Legally Mine and what it does. But just to keep things simple, they help advise companies how to hide their assets and protect their assets from litigation or from tax, things like that. So in December of 2014, what happens? Well, the Utah Department of Workforce Services had served a subpoena on AMMON MCNEFF. I'm not exactly sure all the things about this, so we're just going to touch on the broad strokes. There was a subpoena to AMMON MCNEFF and Legally Mine because AMMON MCNEFF was what we call a member of Legally Mine. Member has a specific meaning in the law when you're talking about an LLC, which is what Legally Mine is. A member means you can think of it as a shareholder. I think at the time he may have also been the president. I'm basing some broad timelines that they've put out that would suggest to me that AMMON MCNEFF was the president of Legally Mine at the time. If that's not quite correct, I will defer to those who have checked because I'm not sure everything I've ever seen from AMMON MCNEFF on this subject is totally believable. So what is going on? What is the Utah Department of Workforce asking for? Well, they went to the court because they said, look, in October, a few months earlier, we issued a subpoena to AMMON MCNEFF and we commanded him to appear before us for an issue related to unemployment insurance. And they say, let me find it here. The subpoena was duly served. A copy of the subpoena, including proof of service, is attached. And AMMON MCNEFF failed to produce the required documents. So in other words, the Utah state government served a subpoena onto AMMON MCNEFF, said, you need to give us some documents, you need to appear before us. And AMMON MCNEFF just didn't do it. He didn't comply. So this is just the first step in what's going to be a long story. The first instance I was able to find of AMMON MCNEFF just completely blowing off the law. And while it's a small step, it kind of orients us into how does this guy view the law? He uses it when he can leverage it to as a brute force instrument against his opponents, but when he's on the defense side, he just ignores it. He'll ignore a subpoena, no problem. So, second document in this same saga, the Utah court looked over the paperwork and then said, yeah, I agree. He was served with a subpoena. He didn't comply. And therefore, I am now ordering AMMON MCNEFF to comply with the government subpoena. I think this second time he finally did comply. The last thing you want is a judge telling you, or the last thing you want to do is ignore a judge's order. Judges have a little bit more power to do bad things to you than probably the Utah Department of Workforce for unemployment insurance. So, step one of the saga. Step one of the saga, we see AMMON MCNEFF just ignoring government-issued subpoenas. How will that play into modern times? Well, hopefully he's got better attorneys now that will not let that happen, but we'll see. So the next document here I want to get into, let me check the date, February of 2014. So we're now, what was the last one? Oh, I guess we're back in time. I should have shown this one first. This is a more interesting one. So in this one, a company called Outsourced Receivables Management sued AMMON MCNEFF and someone named Nicole Fair. I'm not going to try to pronounce Nicole's last name. I will say that later on, we will see documents where AMMON MCNEFF and his wife is named also as Nicole. So I don't know here if this is the same Nicole, but it may be that here it's AMMON MCNEFF and a future wife. I don't know. It's at least someone that has the same first name as his wife. So what do we see here? Well, this company, who is Outsourced Receivables Management, they are a collections agency. They are a collections agency for a bank. We see here in paragraph 3, plaintiff's assigner, Zion's bank overdrafts for an indebtedness. What is the indebtedness? Well, the company is the bank overdraft. So apparently AMMON MCNEFF and this Nicole person overdrafted and owed the bank a bunch of money. It started off small, sum of $316 for valuable goods and services, plus interest to date at a prejudgment rate of 18% per annum. So also plaintiff is entitled to payment of a reasonable attorney's fee. So not a lot of dollars at issue, but here's data point number 2. Writing bad checks, overdrafting. I mean, look, in my life, I've overdrafted before. It happens. There's nothing wrong. I'm not chastising someone for overdrafting. But how bad did this have to get for the bank to assign it to a collections agency, which by itself probably takes many, many months, right? And then that collections agency didn't get anywhere, so then they sued AMMON MCNEFF. I mean, this must have been hanging out for a long time. And they say the indebtedness occurred on or about December 16th, 2013. Okay. I mean, I don't think that we would take that by itself as the date that it actually, like, how they're interpreting the date the indebtedness occurred on. Like I said, my own personal experience, I don't think 2 months went by for them to file suit. There must have been a lot longer than that because no bank's going after you in a rush for $316. So here they asked for attorney's fees, they asked for principal, they asked for interest. And what happens? So this is the next half of this data point. Default judgment. This is the next step in this case. So what happens here? What is a default judgment? Well, a default judgment means AMMON MCNEFF was served with the lawsuit and ignored it. And he ignored it for long enough that the court said, well, okay, you're not going to respond to the complaint. I'm entering judgment against you. And so automatically, because AMMON MCNEFF ignored the lawsuit, he now has a default judgment. And the judge actually kicked it up. So it's now 2x what it was, because now it went from $316 and turned it into a $677 problem. So what happens after that? Well, because he still didn't pay, what did the outsourced receivables, what did the collection agency have to do? They had to go to Legally Mine, where AMMON MCNEFF was working, and they had to garnish his wages. And at this point, he's now racked up even more money. He's now up to $832 on an original $300 debt. What year was this? How did I not pronounce it? Did I not pronounce it Zion? Well, let me. There's a timely super chats. Let me pop that up real quick. We'll get the rest of the super chats here quickly, but this one is I think an important one. What year was this? Also, Zion is pronounced lion with a Z. What year is this? So this is, I guess, 2014, although they say the debt incurred in 2013. I think probably the charges that were the basis of the overdraft were probably a lot earlier than that. Also, I thought I did pronounce Zion as lion with a Z. If I pronounce it as anything other than that, that's just me getting tongue-tied. So, and thank you, by the way, blah, 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 for your $5 super chat. It's a great question. So back to the document. Here. So AMMON MCNEFF racks up a $300 charge. He doesn't have enough money in his account, so it overdrafts for $300. He ignores the bank, because I'm sure the bank would have called multiple times. He ignores the collection agency, because they don't just rush out to sue you right away. And then finally, after he ignored them, the collections agency sued him. So what does he do then? He ignores the lawsuit. So the judge enters a default judgment because you didn't answer you didn't respond to the complaint. You've defaulted on the lawsuit. So what happens then? He still doesn't pay. He doesn't pay, and they have to go and garnish his wages. This is the guy at the time is supposedly president of Legally Mine LLC, the hide your legal assets. And I guess part of the strategy here is you get sued, just ignore the lawsuit. And I guess we see a lot of the similar types of stuff nowadays, don't we? Same kind of playbook a lot of times. In any event, so second case here, just blatantly ignoring, defaulting on bank bills, ignoring collections agencies, ignoring lawsuits, and racking up monies that is owed. So let's now jump in to, I guess, the second or third chapter here of the tale. And before we do that, because this is now a good time, let's cover some super chats. So I think we've got just a couple here. So first, Fran Fitzgerald sent one barbecue counselor gift membership. Thank you, Fran. Really appreciate you and your support as always. It's so kind. And then stamp of approved for $10. Thank you. Ammon brags he's got a psychology degree. He should know better. Frankly, his victim blaming, shaming BS and pop psychology armchair BS is so unethical and exactly why victims don't come forward. I agree. He should know better. He does know better. He knows what he's doing. It's not a coincidence that when Reckless Ben showed up in Utah, that there were systematic calls to police agencies in American Fork and Provo and Orem. They made the rounds. You can see, and each time there are tales meant to, if not wind up and gaslight the police, at least to evoke sympathy to the police. He is using that psychology degree. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he's putting on that fake smile and that, this guy's, threatening to burn down our buildings and threatening to murder our employees. Should I get a shotgun? Who believes that stuff? Unfortunately, the police did. Even if they didn't take action on it, it still biased them towards Reckless Ben. The first time they saw him, think about American Fork, the first time they saw Reckless Ben. You, Ben, you having a good time in Utah? We do things differently here, huh? I mean, it's crazy. So, I think he is using the psychology degree. The problem is it only lasts for so long. It's not going to last once you get into actual court proceedings. Let him ignore it at this point. Let him default again if Reckless Ben files a suit. But if he does file suit, what is Ammon going to do? You're not going to be able to bullshit a jury. Like you might present well. Look, he's very good when he doesn't have the other side calling him out on his bullshit, right? He presents pretty well to the police. He gets the police to believe him. So he gets up there on direct examination, and the jury might initially like him. And then what's going to happen? The cross-examination is going to come, and it's going to be clip after clip after clip of this guy and what he said, and not only what he says, but how he says it and how he looks. Think about those villainous frowns, like everything, like the way the guy looks, the way he talks, the lies. I mean, he's just going to get excoriated on cross-examination. The jury will absolutely hate him. So, stamp of approved. Thank you for your super chat. So let's jump to the next document. Now we get to the next saga, the saga of Legally Mine versus Daniel McNeff, and this should really say Ammon McNeff versus Daniel McNeff, the father-son civil war over who controls Legally Mine. Now, I am not going to get into all the details of this, and I'm not going to get into all the details of Daniel McNeff, the things he did. He's alleged to have done some very bad things, and then he passed those values on to Ammon, I guess. I don't know. The reason why I am going to cover this isn't to go into the details of this. I'm going to touch on the broad strokes, but there's some important things that we get to the next instance of just Ammon McNeff being a deadbeat. And so here I pulled the docket from the Legally Mine versus Daniel McNeff lawsuit. And so let's orient everyone. This is, I think, 2019. Let's see where the complaint is filed. I'm looking for it. There's a lot of... October 16, 2019, the lawsuit is filed. So AMMON MCNEFF is still president of Legally Mine, I believe. He and his brother each have minority ownership interest in the company. Daniel McNeff has the majority ownership interest of like 70% or something, and then the remainder is split between the other two. They sued Daniel McNeff essentially over control of the company. They're trying to wrest control of the Legally Mine entity from Dad. They're suing Dad to take over and steal his company from him. And again, I'm not going into all the details here. I do have other videos on this, and I think I've got some posts on Twitter about it. But at some point, I will go through this stuff if I can get a chance. But today, I want to keep the focus on how does all this story play into AMMON MCNEFF's Deadbeat? Well, first, let's talk about what is important on what we got on the screen here. So first, you see that AMMON MCNEFF is represented by someone named Stephen Sumzian. And I may not be pronouncing that right. And Legally Mine is represented by Steve Sumzian. And why is that? Because at the time, AMMON MCNEFF is president of Legally Mine, and therefore he can leverage, he has the power to authorize Legally Mine and force it to sue Daniel McNeff as the owner. So this case goes on for a long time, and there's all sorts of, this is just the docket, right? So there's all sorts of things. Most of this stuff you see private. I can't actually pull up any of these documents because they've all been put under seal by the court. But so this case goes on for a really long time, and there's some transcripts. Ultimately, this case went to arbitration. And what is arbitration? Well, arbitration means that rather than resolving the dispute in a court, which is subject to public access, other than when things sometimes get filed under seal, generally courts are open to the public because we want our courts to be open and transparent. You can go, and if you want, you can go and watch a murder trial anytime you want down at the courthouse. But arbitration is a little different. Arbitration is when two parties agree that they're going to go to a private arbitrator away from the eyes of the court, so it's not a public proceeding or an open proceeding, and they're going to have basically a private trial, no jury. The arbiter is going to decide, and then the dispute is resolved by the arbitrator. And so that's what they ultimately elected to do here. We get into COVID. I mean, we're just flipping through. And this thing just goes on and on and on forever. So what happened? Because I don't have a lot of the documents, and I don't want to belabor the points of the documents. They went to the arbitrator, and AMMON MCNEFF and his brother Matt on one end, and Daniel McNeff. The arbitrator essentially rules, and it essentially splits the baby, and doesn't kick out Daniel McNeff as an owner of the company, but says AMMON MCNEFF this says Daniel McNeff can no longer be what's called the managing member. So you can think of managing member as kind of like the chairman of the board of directors. So they resolved the dispute. Apparently the brothers and the son didn't like how the arbitrator ruled. Nobody was really happy. They entered into a settlement agreement. And so basically a settlement agreement is a contract. It says, okay, we went to arbitrator. I think what happened is nobody was really happy with the outcome of that. And so they negotiated some more. They came out with a agreement, a settlement agreement, a contract of what was going to happen. Well, as a result of that settlement contract, so what I've got on the screen now, this is a federal lawsuit where AMMON MCNEFF and Matthew McNeff have now sued Daniel McNeff and some other people, including some of the lawyers. They've sued him because there's some issues going on with how this is all going to shake out. Notice again who's representing AMMON and Matthew. Steve Sumzian. This matters And just to foreshadow this, Ammon didn't pay him. Ammon didn't pay the guy, at least allegedly. And we're going to get into that. So we've seen this Steve Sumzian and Cameron Christensen represent Ammon and Matt across now multiple lawsuits. They represented him in the original lawsuit with the dad. I think they represented them in the arbitration. There's now a federal lawsuit where he's representing Ammon McNeff, and they didn't pay him. We're going to get into that. So what do I got here on the screen? What's going on in this federal lawsuit? Well, bottom line is there was arbitration. Ammon and Matthew were awarded some legal fees. And we'll kind of walk through, because this actually explains what happened in that arbitration. So let's find it here. So the allegations were that plaintiffs discovered serious financial wrongdoings, and this is the complaint. This is Ammon and Matt making allegations. These are not the proven facts, so they can put whatever they wanted here. Plaintiffs discovered serious financial wrongdoings. They filed a whistle report with the IRS. Shortly after the whistle report was filed, Dan demoted Ammon and fired him as president of the company. And so what is going on here? Well, this is Ammon and Matt suing their dad a second time, now in federal court, for violation of the federal whistleblower statute. They allege here that, hey, look, our father was violating tax law and doing something wrong. We whistleblew to the IRS. Our dad retaliated by firing us from our position, and we are now suing him in federal court for violating federal whistleblower statutes. Whistleblowers have some protection under federal law. I'm just going to jump through rather than clicking through all of this. I think those are the main beats for this document. Like I said, you can see here, there's all these allegations. They're really happy to have allegations in here. They allege conversion, removal of a member. Yeah, so the main story about them being deadbeats. This is the important point of this federal lawsuit for today's story is that this is the second time they hired Steve Sumzian to represent them. So they've got multiple lawsuits. They've used this guy as their lawyer suing their father. So, okay. Now we're going to jump to yet another chapter. So we're taking a little bit of a detour on our trip to how it came to be that Steve Sumzian got totally screwed over by Ammon McNeff, how his own lawyers got screwed over. We're going to take a detour now and talk about alleged tax evasion, because Ammon McNeff didn't pay his taxes either. So he didn't pay his bank. He didn't pay collection agencies. He defaulted in a lawsuit. And now let's talk about how he evaded taxes. We're now in a lawsuit filed April 14th, 2022. Now it's Daniel McNeff, who is once again in control of Legally Mine. So this Legally Mine, it's like, I don't know what they were doing, but it's like they were passing the baton back and forth. So I guess on this particular day, Daniel McNeff is the one in charge. Actually, before we get into that, let me check my fire. It's probably been going long enough. So let's see if we got a flame still. Oh, we do, but it's about dead. So let's fix that. So the point is, it's too far away for you guys to see, I'm sure. But you always want, when you're doing barbecue, you always want a flame on the log. You don't want it to be smoking too much, because you think, oh, I want to smoke. So lots of smoke is probably good. Well, no, because actually you just want a little bit of smoke. Too much smoke makes the meat taste gross. So I'm going to just add a log, because what happens is this thing's about to die. I can just tell. It's almost all coals. I don't want the coals to I don't want them to cool down too much. I need them to stay hot enough to light this log. So we're just going to throw it in. And of course, since there's already a little bit of a flame, the little bit of a flame is absolutely going to help that log stay lit. So we will let that go for a little while. Lots of oxygen is good, because lots of oxygen plus heat helps combustion. So actually, before we do that, before we get back, let's talk a little bit about Super Chats. I think we've got a few more. Oh, we've got one more from KT Lynn. And Katie Lynn says, thank you, by the way, thank you for the $5 Super Chat. He absolutely does not want a jury trial. Juries are pretty good at sniffing out bullshit. Katie Lynn, that's great. I think I've said that before. Juries do not necessarily understand the technical details of the law. So my area of specialty is technology litigation. I represent companies that do software litigation, semiconductor litigation, real technical stuff. And we always have experts, and the experts do their best to explain things to the jury. The jury probably understands a fraction of the technology stuff. But here's what the juries always understand. They understand credibility, and they understand bullshit. And juries are remarkable. When you get, some juries are 6 men and women, some are 8, some are 10, some are 12. But when you get a group of men and women together to talk through the issues, they are remarkably good at sussing out who are the good guys, who are the bad guys, and seeing through bullshit. And that is one of the reasons, I've said it before on stream, I'll say it again, it is one of the reasons why I believe so strongly in the jury system. I know that jury service can suck. I know a lot of us try to get out of it. I've served on 2 juries since becoming a lawyer, by the way, which is wild. I think totally wild that they wanted lawyers. Both of them were criminal cases. But I will say the United States jury system is so incredibly important. Think about what we have seen in this case alone just from the judges. Think about what we saw with that TRO, and that crazy TRO that just violated the Constitution. The judge had no qualms about issuing something that violated the Constitution. This log is lit, so let me close my door up. The reason why I close my door, oh, I've got to move this a little bit. The reason why I close the door is I want the heat to go backwards, back deeper into the chamber. I do not want the heat to come out this front door. And the bigger I have this door open, the more heat and the more smoke are escaping. So if I do this and close the door a crack, let's leave it a crack open, the smoke and the heat are going that way. And then they're going up the chimney in the back. And that's the way we want it, because we want the heat to go and the smoke to go over the meat and get into the meat. So where was I? Juries are, I think, so important to our society. It sucks to be on jury duty, but if we go back and we look at Judge Tony Graff in just this case, and just the crazy orders he has, would you want one judge deciding the right or the wrong of an issue? Not if it was Tony Graff, and not if it was a lot of judges. Even the judges I respect and like a lot, I would not want them deciding these things. Judges are there to be referees. They are not there to decide who's right and who's wrong or to decide the facts. That's what juries are for. And juries are so important. They're so important for that reason. So thank you, Kaylin, for the $5. Next, Zestalix sent 1 barbecue counselor gift membership. Thank you, Zestalix, my friend, for all your support and all your advice that you give me for helping me with this channel. All right, so let's get back to the sordid tale of AMMON MCNEFF and the tax evasion. So we've got a federal lawsuit. And this one is now brought by Thomas Seiler. Now, Thomas Seiler, I believe, is one of the people who's been representing Daniel McNeff for a long time. So a lot of these lawyers, every time control of Legally Mine changes hands, different set of lawyers represent Legally Mine. But I think Daniel McNeff is Tom Seiler's, Tom Seiler is Daniel McNeff's lawyer. And so now Daniel McNeff is back in control of Legally Mine. And so he has brought the lawsuit. He's now controlling Legally Mine. He says, now Legally Mine, now I'm going to use you to sue my sons. And why is Daniel McNeff suing his sons? Well, he's suing his sons because Legally Mine got an interesting letter. They got an interesting letter from the Internal Revenue Service. saying, hello, Ammon McNeff has not paid his taxes. And so we're now garnishing the assets of Legally Mine because we think he's the owner of the company still. So let's get into this, and I'll touch on some of the important points. Now, I have covered this in another video. I went through and talked about this stuff. But because we were talking about Ammon McNeff as being a deadbeat, I wanted to make sure that we didn't skip this again. If you get a chance, I will, once the live stream is over, I'll link my other video in the description. Please take a minute to go look at it. I don't think it's a very long video, and I get into this stuff. I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting that this guy who goes to the police and is willing to talk about arming employees of his toy store has just over and over and over just like deadbeat kind of stuff. So here, and this lawsuit gives us some interesting details about what happened in that arbitration. So they said, pursuant to the settlement agreement, that's the settlement agreement between Ammon McNeff and the sons, Daniel McNeff and the sons, the defendants, so the two sons, agreed to sell, assign, transfer, and convey to Dan, free and clear of all liens and encumbrances, any and all of their rights, titles, interests, and claims to Legally Mine. So what happened here? What's my interpretation? They weren't happy with what happened in the arbitration. Neither side got exactly what they wanted. So they reached a private agreement where there was a divestiture. The sons said, all right, Dad, fine. You have Legally Mine. We're going to sell you our shares. You pay us. We're going to go our separate ways. You keep your company, and you can do whatever you want. But we're out. We're done with Legally Mine. Okay. So what this federal, or this not federal, this is Daniel McNeff's lawsuit claims is that in fact happened, that they split up the assets, and as a result of which, Dan entered into a promissory note. So a promissory note's like a loan or an agreement to pay. Promissory note with the defendants whereby the plaintiffs, so Dan McNeff and Legally Mine, would, pursuant to a certain schedule, pay defendants $1.7 million. So $1.7 million total, split between the brothers. They get paid out a certain amount each month. The promissory note, as referenced in the preceding paragraph, it's dated January 2021, payable at the rate of $18,000 per month to the defendant. So I think that's $18,000 total to the defendants. It may be $18,000 to each of them, but I think it's $18,000 total or $9,000 to each. There's some allegations in here that Ammon had control of Legally Mine's social media and Google accounts and refused to turn those over. I cover those in my other video, so I'm not gonna repeat that same bit here. But what I want to focus on is where we get to the unpaid taxes. So here, the third claim for relief, the Department of Treasury delivered a notice of levy on wages, salary, and other income dated November 29, 2021 to Legally Mine. So now we have the notice of levy as to Ammon D. McNeff and Nicole McNeff. I don't know if this is the same Nicole that we saw earlier, but Ammon and his wife, their wages have been levied. And since Ammon was getting a certain amount each month pursuant to that promissory note, that counts as wages. And so the IRS is saying, Ammon McNeff didn't pay his taxes, and we are now using Legally Mine to garnish some portion of that $18,000 a month to make him pay. So let's break this down. Taxes for the period ending December 31st, 2016. So Ammon McNeff for 2016, unpaid taxes of almost $78,000. Then for calendar year 2017, unpaid taxes of $49,000. These are the unpaid taxes for just that amount. So this guy didn't pay. He owed, in 2016, he owed $78,000 in taxes that he didn't pay. The next year, he racked up almost $50,000 in taxes he didn't pay. 2018, he racked up almost $28,000 in taxes he didn't pay. And so you add up all those together, and it comes out to be about $172,000 just for those 3 years of unpaid taxes. Now, I believe, and maybe we'll see it in here, I believe he continued to not pay beyond this, but there was some agreement that Legally Mine would not be on the hook of that. 2021, counsel for plaintiffs sent a letter on behalf of plaintiffs to defendants counsel, so the Sun's counsel, Stephen Sumsian. So Sumsian is still representing Ammon and Mac. Your counsel provides sufficient notice. So bottom line, because I don't want to just read this whole thing. Bottom line is there was roughly $180,000 over 3 years that AMMON MCNEFF racked up in taxes that he just didn't pay. And so the federal government, the IRS said, well, we're garnishing that $9,000 a month. So let me find the actual tax IRS document. So we've got the receipts here. So, okay. 668-W, notice of levy on wages. We're listing Ammon and Nicole McNeff. I've redacted out their addresses. Legally Mine, based in Orem. And so 3 years worth of unpaid taxes for a total amount of $171,000, almost $172,000 in unpaid taxes. This is a Form 668 from the IRS. So this is an official government form signed by someone with the last name of Blaine, representative of the IRS. So this is an official signed operations by the operations manual. Are there other unpaid taxes? Yep. I mean, they attached it several times. I'm not sure why they attached it several times. But you can see there, I mean, there's a lot of filings. I mean, Legally Mine was getting a lot of submissions from the IRS on this. In 2021, Steve Sumsian responds saying we received it. Then there was a dispute. Bottom line is Legally Mine and Daniel McNeff told the Suns through Steve Sumsian, the lawyer, we got this thing from the IRS. We're going to, unless you tell us otherwise and give us a very good reason not to do so, we're going to take that $18,000 and we're giving it every month to the IRS in satisfaction of your debt. Surprisingly, the Suns didn't like that. They wrote a nasty gram through Steve Sumsian and said, hey, you can't do that. So there was some back and forth. They're all fighting about this and what's going to happen. And then ultimately, Legally Mine and Daniel McNeff filed the lawsuit. So that's where we have the next chapter come in. And so let's kind of summarize where we're at now. Ignored subpoenas by the Utah state government to provide documentation. Didn't pay bank, overdrafted on bank, bounced checks, whatever. Ignored the collections agency. Ignored the lawsuit, ignored the default judgment, had to have his wages garnished a first time. Gets into a lawsuit with his father. As a result of that lawsuit, they go their separate ways, but Ammon MCNEFF then gets his wages garnished a second time by the IRS for $170-something thousand of unpaid taxes, a massive amount of unpaid taxes. And so now, where are we? Well, we're at the next chapter. What happened with Steve Sumsian? Well, turns out Steve Sumsian didn't get paid. Representing Ammon MCNEFF in all of these lawsuits across all these years, Sumsian wasn't getting paid. Now, I'll start off by saying I don't know how much they refused to pay Sumsian on, because what we're looking at on the screen here is the lawsuit that Sumsian filed against AMMON MCNEFF for unpaid legal bills. Now, initially, Sumsian sued both AMMON MCNEFF and Legally Mine. Why? I'm not sure, but I think it's because at the time that Sumsian first represented AMMON MCNEFF in the lawsuit against the dad, AMMON MCNEFF had the baton of controlling Legally Mine at the time. And so, from Sumsian's point of view, AMMON MCNEFF and Legally Mine both owed him because he was doing work on behalf of both of them. Well, Legally Mine eventually gets dismissed. We don't exactly know what happened because the filings were either under seal or they were closed-door negotiations, but Legally Mine gets dropped out eventually. Now, this case was filed in 2025, a little more than a year ago. It's still going on. There's stuff happening in this lawsuit like a couple days ago. So AMMON MCNEFF is actively fighting his former lawyer because the former lawyer is like, hey, I didn't get paid. You need to pay me for the work I did. Now, let's see a couple interesting things. So Casey L. Wright. Now, this is just a side note. Casey L. Wright is now handling all of the lawsuits where AMMON MCNEFF is fighting either with the dad or with Sumsian. Casey Wright has not been assigned to any of the cases involving Reckless Ben. But if it involves Daniel McNeff and AMMON MCNEFF, Legally Mine, etc., Casey Wright's been assigned to all those cases. Second thing that's important, who is now representing AMMON MCNEFF? William Kelly Nash. For those of you that don't know, who is William Kelly Nash? Well, he's the Denton's lawyer. He's the Denton's lawyer that's representing Bricks and Minifigs and AMMON MCNEFF today. He's representing AMMON MCNEFF against Reckless Ben. So at some point, AMMON MCNEFF and Steve Sumsian must have gone their separate ways, and AMMON MCNEFF hired the Denton's law firm instead. And now Denton's is doing all of AMMON MCNEFF's dirty work. So AMMON MCNEFF, now represented by Kelly Nash and Denton's, against the former lawyers who haven't been paid. Now, we'll just flip through this. As you can see, there have been a lot of things filed under seal. Now, why would, in this case, the documents be filed under seal? There's actually a very legitimate reason for that. It is not nefarious. This was actually an action taken by Sumsian because Sumsian's a plaintiff. But even though Sumsian and MCNEFF are no longer working together, there are still ongoing obligations related to attorney-client privilege that Steve Sumsian has. And so when a lawyer and his client get into a legal dispute, like for malpractice or unpaid bills, the lawyer's got to file all of their things under seal by default because the lawyer does not have the right to waive attorney-client privilege. AMMON MCNEFF can. AMMON MCNEFF is not required to file things under seal. And he could tell Sumsian, you don't have to either. A client controls attorney-client privilege, when it can be waived and when it cannot be. The lawyer cannot waive attorney-client privilege to the lawyer because what's probably in these documents is a bunch of stuff about the conversations that they had, stuff that's protected by attorney-client privilege. So the lawyers have to file this stuff under seal so that the judge can see it, and so that the other side can see it, but the public can't see it because of attorney-client privilege. So this is, to me, when I see all this stuff here, this is very normal to me. There's nothing nefarious about it, but the consequence of that is we don't actually see a lot of the exact allegations. So we can see this thing's going on for a long time. And really, I do have a couple documents we can look at. There's several hearings, but this thing is going on even to like 3 days ago, there was a motion. So where this case is at, the parties are in discovery, they're exchanging documents, and there was some allegation that Sumsian was making improper demands, that he was demanding documents that had already been turned over, and so there's some motion practice going on. Now, this case, like I said, July 23rd, 2026, they're still fighting this stuff. This is actively being litigated. So while all the Reckless Ben stuff is going on, AMMON MCNEFF is having to fight a totally separate lawsuit about him not having paid his legal bills to the last lawyer. Some of you may be asking, why would Denton's represent AMMON MCNEFF, knowing that he didn't pay his previous lawyer? Well, I suspect probably what happened is Denton's required a significant payment up front and probably put a lot of conditions on AMMON MCNEFF in order to represent him going forward, because they wouldn't take the business risk of hiring someone who didn't pay his last lawyers and is being sued by his last lawyers. They must have gotten some kind of deal up front for a very hefty retainer. Now, given the number of lawsuits Denton's is handling for these guys, it must be a huge retainer. So before we get to the next document, it looks like we have some super chats come in. So let's cover those real quick. This is Katie Lynn for $2. He should know better after having that site degree. Yeah, he absolutely should know better. Thank you for the $5, Katie Lynn. And then Katie Lynn also $10. Thank you again. That's why lawyers' biggest fear is jury nullification. Like, people can legit break the law, but juries will vote against the law. It's like, as a society, we subscribe to natural law theory. Yeah, jury nullification is a concern. I would say the system guards against that. At the end of every trial, the juries are given lengthy set of instructions about what they have to do and how they are to apply the law. There is also a process before a trial starts called voir dire, and voir dire is where the lawyers get to ask prospective jurors before they've been seated various questions. And part of the purpose of voir dire is to make sure the lawyers are satisfied that none of the juries would fall to jury nullification, and that they will be able to apply the law as the judge gives it to them. Now, there's a difference between jury nullification and taking into account common sense. The jury's always allowed to take in their common sense. They need to apply the law, but they'll always apply the law within the context of their common sense. They bring with them their real world experiences. And along that comes the bullshit detector. So yes, jury nullification is a big concern. I think it is less of a concern in civil suits than it is in criminal suits. The bigger concern with criminal suits is, you're putting someone in jail and taking away their liberties. Whereas civil suits, it's typically about money. And so you're less worried about jury nullification there. But there's always an appeal to common sense. A good trial lawyer will always appeal to the jury's common sense, because it's what they use to base their decisions on which side they're going to believe, who they believe is correct. Because a lot of times in these trials, each side will have, for example, experts that say exactly opposite things. And how's the jury supposed to figure that out? Well, they use their common sense. And that's, as trial lawyers, you've got to apply that as well. Stamped of approve for $5. Thank you. My nan always said, remember, if you point a finger, 3 more points back at you. Bam, are in overdrive. Okay, I'm not making a gun. This is me pointing a finger, 3 pointing at me, 1 pointing at the world. Yeah, exactly. If you point a finger, 3 more points back at you. Bam, are in overdrive, pointing at a lot to hide their wrongdoing. I totally agree. Totally agree. Their press releases have been wild. The press releases about what was the one that I saw this last week? Like, how you move a Lego set? Like, it's crazy. And the things that they're pointing to, we've covered this in other live streams. So I don't want to get back into stuff we've covered completely, but we've seen, like, I've walked through why it is that Chris Gorman was allowed to enter into the consignment agreement, and why, when they took over her store, the Bricks and Minifigs corporate took on the obligations of that consignment agreement. But yet they're out there saying, well, we didn't authorize that consignment agreement. Well, you didn't need to, because your contract with Chris Gorman said she could do that. And when you decided to take over the business, you take on the good and the bad, you take on the assets and the liabilities, because you're carrying on the business of operating the store. And so they're out there pointing a lot of fingers at Chris Gorman, And the reality is that's the great example of the three fingers pointing back at them, because the contracts don't say what they're claiming the contracts say. So, but thank you, stamp of approval. Rose investigates for $2. Thank you, Rose. Oh, I didn't click. Hold on. Have you seen Kelly Nash's filed time notes? No, I haven't, Rose. And I would be so I'm going to qualify. I'll say what I want, and then I'm going to qualify. I would be very interested in seeing those time notes. However, an attorney's time notes typically are very privileged information. And so I would only want to see those time notes if they were properly publicly filed. And so any privilege that attached to them had been properly waived. I do not want to look at anything that is subject to attorney-client communications. I don't want to be a participant in looking at something that should not be public. But if they were openly filed and there's no dispute that privilege has been waived, I would love to take a look at those and analyze them, because the time notes. So what people for the non-lawyers here, what is a time note? Every month you fill out your time entry, and we lawyers live by the 10th of the hour, every 6-minute increments, and we write out what we do. You take how much you did the task and what did you do in a task, and that forms the bill. So I do time notes all the time. And so what the time notes are is it would be William Nash at this point, or Kelly Nash, saying what happened and what he was billing Legally Mine for. And then Rose is saying, let me pop that one up. Rose says they're filed in the Sumsian e-filing incorrectly. So yeah, if Sumsian filed that and he shouldn't have, I don't want to look at them, because it's privileged, and I believe very strongly attorneys and clients need to be able to have frank conversations. And there's very few exceptions to attorney-client privilege in our society, and I don't want to violate anything like that. But if there's something that's publicly available and it's okay, yeah, I'd happy to look at it. Next one, Mercurial Ire for $19.99. Thank you so much. Didn't Daddy McNeff and Legally Mine own a significant amount of BAM stock, then just won his sons out of Legally Mine and gave them the $1.7 million, and eventually gave them control of BAM to get them out of his hair in Legally Mine? I think so. The reason why I think so is because when I look back at what's called the franchise disclosure document, so that's a document that Bricks and Minifigs franchising is required to file with state governments every year. And I look back at the earlier ones from right after the McNeffs took over Bricks and Minifigs. So that's like 2018, 2019, 2020. I see in there stock disbursements to Legally Mine and to individuals associated with Legally Mine. So I think that there was originally some arrangement where Legally Mine owned part of Bricks and Minifigs. I do not know what the current state of that is. So it may be ongoing, it may not. They may have totally divested themselves. I think that's probably what was going on with that arbitration, with the settlement agreement after the arbitration. I think they probably just totally split and went their separate ways. But I'm not 100% sure. But certainly at some point, Legally Mine did have an ownership interest in there. And then, like Brandy Alexander for $4.99, thanks for bringing all this down in an easy to understand way. Great job. Thank you. That's what I'm here to try to do, is to try to do this in a clear and explainable way for everyone. So let's jump back to the document. I'm going to go check on the barbecue real quick. Let's see what we got. Nope. So I waited a little bit too long. My fire has gone out. But it's still pretty red. That's good. So usually what I do here is I kind of stir the coals around, Get that heat moving around again. And then we're going to add another log. The wood I am using today is oak. My oak wood is seasoned really nice right now. And I had some really good logs at the top of my pile. So, all right, I need to make sure this catches. So let's give it a second. Yeah, it's going to catch in just a second, and I can tell because it immediately started smoldering and getting real fiery or real smoky. All right, so the next document I want to get to. So we do have some documents in this lawsuit between Sumsian and AMMON MCNEFF, and so we do know a few things here. All right, so here's the number. This is wild. Plaintiff's nature of the action. The plaintiff seeks payment for legal representation of AMMON MCNEFF and Matthew McNeff in multiple legal matters pursuant to signed fee agreement in the amount of no less than $524,000, $500,000 they owe Sumsian. Okay, this is now lit. Let me close the... And of course the wind is blowing like right towards where I'm sitting. Let's check the temp. This temp is a little low. So I'm actually going to add a second log right now. And the reason why I'm adding a second log is because I want this thing to be smoking and cooking at around, today I'm going to go for around 250 degrees, maybe as much as 275. And the reason for that is I want this thing done in time to eat dinner. And it was only at about 200 degrees. Check out ECF. So Rose says for $2, check out ECF 262. Rose, let me know in the comments which ECF. Is that in this unpaid legal bills lawsuit, or is it in the federal suit? Because ECF is federal. Let me know. Anyway, so back to the story. 524,000 unpaid legal bills. That's wild. That's totally wild. Now, what is going on in this document? So this is the motion to dismiss for failure to state a cause of action. This was brought by Legally Mine. So when we see, so right now, let's see who filed this. Tom Seiler. Okay, so I know that when Legally Mine filed this motion this time, this is Dan McNeff. So Dan McNeff, still in control of Legally Mine. We know that because he's using the same Tom Seiler lawyer. Legally Mine filed the motion to dismiss. And they're saying here it was AMMON and Matthew McNeff who racked up $500,000 in legal bills. And they said the complaint focuses on the McNeffs owing that money, not Legally Mine. They say Legally Mine failed to, the complaint failed to allege that Legally Mine owes anything. There's multiple references to the attorney-client relationship being between Sumsian and the McNeffs. And I'm just scrolling here. So bottom line, what is this document? This is the document where Legally Mine says, hey, you're not actually accusing us of refusing to pay your legal bills, so please dismiss us from the case. The result of this, I think, yeah, was the order granting. Legally Mine, non-opposition states that plaintiff does not oppose Legally Mine's motion to dismiss, so Sumsian was like, yeah, you're right. I am just going after the sons. I'm going after AMMON and Daniel McNeff, or AMMON and Matt McNeff. So bye-bye Legally Mine. They're free. Because why? Because AMMON and Matt aren't part of Legally Mine anymore. They're done. There is a second amended verified answer. November. I'm just trying to read this. There was one more document, and I'll see if I can pull up the document Rose suggested. This is, what is this? So this is the amended verified answer and counterclaim. So what is that? So this is, well, who filed this? William Kelly Nash. So this is Ammon and Matt McNeff filing counterclaims. They're responding to the allegations in the complaint and adding counterclaims. So the answers are kind of interesting. So multiple things that are being admitted here. They admit that there was a fee agreement. They admit that there was some unpaid stuff. They admit executing a settlement agreement, which called for monthly installments to be made. McNeff's assert the so-called fee agreement. So I'm trying to find the part where it kind of bottom lines it. So the McNeffs admit executing the settlement agreement, and where the legally mind agreed to execute a promissory note totaling $1.7 million. The McNeffs admit executing the same. Demand for payment. Where's the counterclaims? We're still in the... Okay. Here's the part where initial verbal legal fee agreement. So they're saying there was an initial verbal legal fee, like we had a verbal agreement for fees. We acknowledge that Sumsian did prepare some invoices, but he didn't prepare all invoices. I think the base allegations are that Sumsian wasn't giving them bills on a regular basis. I'm trying to find the bottom line here. Reaching the settlement. So they're claiming Legally Mine paid Sumsian, and therefore Legally Mine satisfied the entire debt. There was just some really wild language in here where they basically admit that they didn't pay Sumsian, but they said that there was some silly nonsense reason that they gave. But for Sumsian's waiver of any obligation. Let's see, McNeff's are entitled to declaratory relief. That he... Yeah, so I can't immediately find the stuff that I saw before, but so I'll just try to bottom line it for everyone. Their former lawyer says that he's out $500,000. The sons say, no, we're not out. You're not out $500,000. And in fact, Legally Mine paid some of that money to you. But on the other hand, Legally Mine has been dismissed from the case. So, I think this is one we probably want to pay attention to. I may do some follow-up. The reason why I brought it up today is just the wildness of what we've seen here. So we go back to unpaid, overdrafts, ignoring lawsuits, unpaid taxes, unpaid collections. They didn't. I mean, this Sumsian guy did a lot of work for them over like several years. I don't know the ultimate amount that they're saying they're out, or what that he'll ultimately prevail on. But he's claiming $500,000 in unpaid legal fees. And so it's just, you know, and we flip through. What is this? This is a 30. What page does things end? So 35 pages of reasons and excuses why AMMON MCNEFF shouldn't have to pay his lawyer back. And to me, and maybe we'll dig into this particular document in more detail. But the bottom line, in like a future video, but the bottom line is every time he's accused of doing something wrong, or every time he's caught in a lie, the excuses go crazy. And so, yeah, it turns out you didn't pay your lawyer a bunch of money, and he's got all these wild, 35 pages of excuses why he shouldn't have had to pay his lawyer. So I don't know. I mean, we've seen this over and over and over again with the guy, right? There's no U-Haul. Show him the picture of the U-Haul. Oh, the U-Haul is there, but it turns out the guy had to drive and get a trailer, and only a U-Haul could be a trailer. Why wouldn't you just get the U-Haul trailer? Why wouldn't you just rent a truck instead of a U-Haul? None of it makes any sense. He's driving all, Brandon Best is driving all around with the U-Haul to do all sorts of things. I mean, it's just totally wild. So let me see real quick. Let me see real quick if I can pull up this document. So you're gonna have to bear with me for a minute because I'm doing this live. And then it's going to be a surprise to all of us what this document is. I'm just logging into the Utah court system. Hopefully none of you can see my passwords for things. Okay, so AMMON MCNEFF. All right, so we go to the lawsuit and ECF 262. Let's see if we can find that. I think I have seen this document. Okay, so we're going to, because streaming is dynamic, as my favorite LawTube streamer says, we're just going to do this on the fly. I hope this is remotely interesting to you all, but we're going to look up the Declaration of William Kelly Nash because Rose says it's bonkers, and I trust Rose. So let's pull it up. Before we do that, let us get into a few of the super chats. Let me pull it up. Okay, Rose for $2. Check out ECF 262. That's what we're about to do. And for another $2, Sumsian, sorry, not ECF, state filing. That's also what we're about to do. And then Big G Polly's greenhouse for $2. Message retracted. So thank you for the $2. But then a second one a few minutes later. Are you Jamaican? Yeah, I am, Mon. I am not Jamaican. I am American. But thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. All right, let's get into what Rose says is a wild document. All right, so declaration of William Kelly Nash regarding attorney's fees regarding statement of discovery issue. So what is going on here? So to orient people, in this part of the case, there was a fight over discovery where Steve Sumsian, the former lawyer, said, hey, Ammon and Matt McNeff owe me some documents. They haven't given me those documents. Ammon and Matt, through Denton's lawyer, wrote back to the court, no, he's wrong. We already turned those over. And they said, and because you're forcing us to because Steve Sumsian was so wrong about this fight over what documents had been turned over, we want to recover our attorney's fees. In fact, did we look at? We did not look at it. Anyway. So, William Kelly Nash hereby declares and states as follows: I'm an attorney and partner at Denton. I've been a member of the Utah Bar and a practicing attorney for over 39 years. Okay, so what does all of this tell me? So he's been a practicing attorney for over 39 years. He's not doing a lot of the legwork in these cases. He's a senior partner, so he's probably got other junior partners or associates that are helping him on these cases, including the reckless Benz cases. So it tells me he's probably not the day-to-day guy on these, but he, as the lead trial lawyer, he's the one that signs all the documents. So he still has to sign off on everything, but he's not the ones that are doing a lot of the legwork. This is during the course of Denton's DDJP, that's Denton's, or the course of Denton's Representative McNeff. I have supervised the work of, yep, just like I said, he supervises the work of people, including Attorney Rich. So, so this is why perhaps this is why Rose wanted me to look at this. William Kelly Nash, $535 an hour. That is wild. That is wild. I'm surprised a little bit that a senior partner with 39 years of experience is only billing out at $535 an hour. The reason why that surprises me is because Denton's is the largest law firm in the world by number of lawyers. They're in what's known as, I think, the AmLaw 50, which is the 50 top grossing law firms in the country. And yet if he's only billing out at $500 an hour, that's crazy. I think not a lot of AmLaw 50 companies, law firms would be billing out at $535 an hour. I can tell you my billing rate is higher than $535 an hour. I think my paralegals bill out at more than $535 an hour. His associate Justin Rich, $385 an hour. That's not surprising. I would expect an associate not in prime market. So prime market would be, for example, New York City, San Francisco Bay Area, and Los Angeles. First year associates bill out probably, or at least they used to, around $385 an hour. So this is probably a fair rate for an associate who's based in Utah. And by the way, also the fact that they're in Utah may also taint these numbers, like lower the numbers, because Utah is going to be a lower market than, for example, Silicon Valley or New York City. What that also tells me is that probably all the partners are not billing out. They don't probably bill out partners at a standardized rate, because those Denton attorneys that are in, like, for example, New York City, there's no way a partner in New York City, even at Denton's, is billing out at $535 an hour. So William Kelly Nash put in more time on this particular issue. Again, this was a discovery fight. 9 hours on a discovery issue. That's wild. That's wild. I'm not gonna bore you all with the intricacies of discovery fights, but William Kelly Nash is billing out more. He spent more time on a discovery fight than his associate. I would expect this number to be, if the total number here is roughly 16 and a half, I would expect the associate to bill out 10 to 12 hours and William Kelly Nash to be like 4 hours or less. And the reason why is because discovery fights are mundane and monotonous, and you don't want the partner with the higher billing rate like wasting a lot of time on like a budget. Because every lawsuit will have a budget, and you don't want the partner burning a lot of time. Although there's only like $150 an hour difference between the two. So they're asking for seven grand. Yeah, that's wild. Let's see. Let's look at the Exhibit A. Oh, okay. Attention to statement of discovery issues. Sumsian. All right. What is that? Okay, statement of discovery issues. Continue preparation for and attend scheduled hearing. Okay, so some of William Kelly Nash's time is for the hearing. So that kind of explains things a little bit. Strategy conference. And by the way, Rose, if there's a particular page of this timesheet you want me to focus on, let me know. Just put it in the comments. Review and revise the... So what we're looking at here on the page, this is the date, this is the timekeeper's initials in the second column, third column is the timekeeper's name, the fourth column is their title at the firm, so associate or shareholder. The next is the number of hours. The next is the billing rate? No, this is the total amount billed, and then the next to last column is the billing rate. So I'm just flipping through here, looking at what we've got. Oh, Rose, and I'll put your super chat up in a second. Rose says, more surprised they waived privilege on AEO. I am a little surprised that they waived privilege here. It's not under seal. And when was this filed, by the way? Let me check. This was filed on July 8th, so several weeks ago. I'm not concerned that they filed something several weeks ago and didn't try to fix the error, so this must be intentional. Phone records conference. Communication records, argue the same. Okay, so this is wild, but since we've covered this, let me, oh, I don't know why I just blacked out. Let me pull up one other thing. Because so what that is that's William Kelly Nash saying, here's all the time me and my firm spent on this particular issue that we won on, and we want to get our attorney's fees back. The judge did grant that request, but the other side filed a objection. Let me pull that up because their objections were actually kind of interesting. So give me 1 second. All right. Motion regarding the order granting the attorney's fees. So this is who's filing this? Steve Sumsian. So Steve Sumsian said they're requesting reconsideration of the court's order granting the attorney's fees from that schedule we saw. And he says there's problems. There's problems with what William Kelly Nash did. He screwed up, just like he screwed up the TRO. But that's neither here nor there today. William Kelly Nash, McNeff's failure to allocate purports, blah, 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 blah. That's fine. Okay, so here are some of the time entries that they sought fees for. This is why I didn't flip through everything on that last document, but drafting, so the issue here, just to give everyone the bottom line, Sumsian came back and said, hey, Judge, you like gave them, you gave AMMON MCNEFF a bunch of attorney's fees for this discovery fight, but it turns out that they actually they put in a bunch of stuff there that had nothing to do with the issue that we were fighting over. And so they're just trying to slip in new stuff to get more attorney's fees. So for example, drafting a deposition exam that has nothing to do with the discovery fight they were going for. Review deposition and key communications record. Again, nothing to do with that discovery fight. Submit notice regarding amended counterclaim and order. So bottom line, all of these things are totally unrelated to the issue they were fighting over. And so Sumzin has come back and said, Your Honor, you gotta take a second look at this, because they slipped in a bunch of bullshit that had nothing to do with anything, and they're just trying to pad the bills that they're asking you to force us to pay. So that, I think, is just that kind of brings us up to date. And by the way, this thing that we're looking on the screen, this was what was filed like on Friday or Thursday. So that is where we're at today. So we took a little bit of a side detour, but bottom line, is AMMON MCNEFF a deadbeat? So let me put this out to you all. Is AMMON MCNEFF a deadbeat? Yes or no? If you think he's a deadbeat, put 1 in the live chat below. While I give you guys time to do that, I am going to go back and check my meat. So 1 means yes, he's a deadbeat, if you guys think so. I'll be right back. All right, so the flame's still going pretty good. I am going to get my handy dandy meat thermometer, and we're gonna see what temp our meat is at. When I probe my meat, by the way, I use a ThermaPen 1. I'm not sponsored by these guys. I don't get any affiliate links or anything, but I love my ThermaPen 1. It does. It's very fast, it's very accurate. And you want fast and accurate, because I don't want this door open for too long. All right, so we're gonna check. The meat looks pretty good. There is a good bark forming on it. I'm just gonna probe this. It's about 117 degrees. Now with pulled pork, ultimately, I want this thing to be around 200 degrees. Now, at some point, once it gets to around 150 or so, I think I'm going to wrap it in foil. I don't normally wrap it in foil. That's what we call a Texas crutch. I don't normally wrap pulled pork in foil, but I'm going to today because I want to eat this for dinner, and it's already close to 2 p.m. my time. So, all right, I see plenty of 1s. Yeah. Oh gosh, I'm scrolling up. I see tons of 1s. Absolutely. But yeah. So like my opinion on this, I think the guys had serious problems in the past. Somewhere in the mess of the McNeff Civil War, Daniel McNeff, the father, attached a document, a letter he had sent to their arbitrator when they were still in arbitration. And the dad had said something about he's going to let the sons have bricks and minifigs as long as they haven't run the company into the ground. And I think that we can infer 2 things from that. First, I think we can infer that the dad thinks these guys are financially just knuckleheads. And I think that's completely consistent with what we've seen today. You know, unpaid bank debts, unpaid taxes, unpaid legal bills. I think they're knuckleheads. The second thing we can infer from that is the dad thinks that they're going to destroy bricks and minifigs. And I think we're starting to see that as well. If you go back to the live stream I did a few weeks ago, and I've got videos on this that I will link in the description. They have They have employed their quote unquote legally mined tactics to the point where on paper, bricks and minifigs franchising is not destitute, not bankrupt, but it hasn't been profitable for 7 years. I would say they're pillaging and raiding bricks and minifigs, consistent with the corporate structure. If you guys have not, I encourage you to watch my friend LUS's stream. He has had some great videos, and I think he may have covered it today. Just recently covering how the franchise setup that Bricks and Minifigs has set is essentially a multi-level marketing scheme. And I think that's what they're doing here. I think they've converted what started off to be a mom and pop company, Bricks and Minifigs, to open up stores, and they've converted it into effectively a pyramid scheme for these franchisees. And fully consistent with that, they then shield the assets and hide the assets of the top of the pyramid in a way that prevents accountability. Some may ask, well, how do you reconcile that? How do you fix that? Well, there are ways you can go after them personally. There are ways that you can do it. They've set up a bunch of shell companies. I think this week I'm going to try to get into some of those shell companies that they've set up. But the bottom line is, when you've got 5 shell companies that are all at the same address, all owned and controlled by the same 2 people, however they hide their assets amongst those companies, you're still going to be able to go after them. It's called what we in the law call alter ego liability, or also piercing the corporate veil liability. It means you can reach the assets of another company, a related company that isn't a party to the lawsuit, because it's effectively the same company. They're just creating the formality of different corporations in order to hide assets. And the law does have ways of addressing that. The downside is that it can become time-consuming and expensive to collect. So with that, let's get into some super chats. One second here. Okay, MGPL for $10 Canadian. Thank you so much for the super chat. Based on the U-Haul website, the U-Haul was returned at 2:24, 6:12 a.m., not 12:41 a.m., with 186 miles, different than what BAM claimed. He had to move Legos to Eugene. So thank you so much for the super chat, MGPL. This is one that I'm not really sure how it falls out. If you follow CoffeeZilla had a follow-up to his main video talking about this exact fact, and he seemed to have some doubts about what exactly the various numbers meant. I will say only this. The man who was supposed to show up and take over a store on the night of November 14th, 2024, he was supposed to show up first to do an inspection because he wanted to buy it, but then it turns out he was actually there to kick Chris Gorman out of her store. That man showed up not in a rental car, and if he needed to haul something, not in a pickup truck. I go camping, by the way. When I go camping, a lot of times I will rent a pickup truck from Enterprise Rental Car or wherever, because if I need to haul something, I can haul it with the pickup truck. Here's what I don't do when I need to haul something in a trailer. I don't go rent a U-Haul. So it doesn't make sense to me. Now, with the specifics of what's written on this paper or that paper, what time it was actually turned in, I don't know. There's been different theories, and I'm not sure. But so for me, it's Occam's razor. And I mentioned Occam's razor, I think, in a video the other day. The simplest answer is usually the correct one. He rented a U-Haul because he wanted to put things in the U-Haul. Let's leave it at that. But thank you for the super chat. I think we get to the same point without me trying to figure out and interpret what's on the U-Haul contracts and stuff. Dan Varney X3E for $20. Thank you so much. He says, Barbecue Council. If you don't know me, you will. I love what you do. Thank you so much, Dan. I appreciate that. This is a new channel. I think I've been around for a little more than a month now. We do mostly Reckless Ben stuff, but there's other lawsuits I like to follow. I follow the Karen Reed stuff. I have started to follow some of the various copyright lawsuits going on amongst content creators and streamers. And so, I've got lots of, I got something in my eye, sorry. I've got lots of topics I love to cover. And please let me know in the comments, or if you go to my channel page, you can drop posts in the community, or if you become a member, you can send me messages as a member. What cases are interesting to you? Because I want to cover stuff that you guys want to watch. And I love Reckless Ben. Eventually Reckless Ben's going to be done, right? Eventually the whole dispute's going to be over. So I want to know what you guys like to hear. So please drop them in the comments. Rose investigates for $2. I was just more surprised they waived privilege on AEO. Already touched on this with you, but yeah, I'm surprised they did that as well. But it's been over 2 weeks since they filed that document. So they didn't correct it. So I don't feel like I've got any kind of ethical or professional restriction on looking at it. Since they kept it on there, they didn't try to seal it. It's fair game. And now we know his billing rate, among other things. And again, Rose, for another $2, thank you. Intended under seal. And it did. It said attorney-client's eyes only on there. But yeah, it's waived. They filed it on the public docket. They did not try to seal it. Or I'll put it this way, because I didn't scan the whole thing. They either didn't try to seal it, or they tried to seal it and it got denied. Either way, it's on them, not me, and not us. It's fair game to look at those documents. I will add, let's say someone if it had been filed on Friday, not under seal, I would not have looked at it, because there might have been an error in the filing, and I would give them a couple weeks to fix it. After a couple weeks goes by and they haven't fixed it, that tells me that they don't plan on it and they're going to leave it as is, and it's okay for us to look at. Katie Lynn for $5. You bill more than $5.35 an hour, so everything I send you a DM, I owe you $50. Can we just call it even with all the super chats and tea I send you? I do bill out more than $5.35. I don't want to say more than that. And I will say, what you don't know, Katie Lynn, is I dressed up as a UPS driver. I put on a mustache, or I put on a fake beard and eyeglasses, and I went to your house, even though I don't know where you live, and I had you sign a contract that says every time you send me a DM, you owe me $5,000. So we'll be talking about that separately. I got the idea from a buddy of mine named Ben. So he had a good idea on that. Big Polly's Greenhouse for another $2. Jamaican RU, I am on cat. Yeah, I suspect this might be a friend of mine messing with me. But yes, thank you for the $2. Katie Lynn for another $2. Check your meat. What the F? This isn't OnlyFans. True. In this case, my meat is the pork shoulder blade. Which, interesting enough, if you didn't know, pork shoulder is called the butt. So on humans, a butt is in a very different place than on a pig. On a pig, the butt is the shoulder. So there, now you've all learned something interesting about barbecue today. Justice for Heroin Bird. I love the name. Justice for, by the way, if we haven't said it, Justice for Tattle. What happened to that poor bird? What did they really do with it? Why was the bird cage in the pickup truck the next day? The bird had a clipped wing. It couldn't fly. I don't want to know what they did with it. I feel real bad for Tattle. But yeah, I think it's a good idea. I should get a second action camera, and when I get up to check on the barbecue, I'll flip over to it and we can all look at the status of the meat. So that'd be fun. Stamped of approval for $5. Too big for their boots and not bright. Plus saying something considering it's coming from the con father himself who taught them to be con artists. Yeah, yeah. I think that letter to the arbitrator was very telling. I think it was very telling. I mean, obviously I don't know. Like, I have a son. My son is 13. I could not imagine. I could not imagine ever being in a situation where I was at such odds with my own son. I've got a daughter. Same goes for my daughter. I'm just saying sons because here it's the father and sons. That we would be filing lawsuits, going to arbitration. You know, I just, we don't need to say anymore. Like, the actions speak volumes, right? We don't need to say. We already did our put in the chat what we think of Ammon, but yeah, it's awful. It's awful. Rose investigates for $2. Have you seen newest BAM Matt updates? I was watching Luz's stream earlier. If those are what you're talking about, I will take a look when we get off. I'm trying to limit how much I do live, Rose, because I want to make sure I can thoughtfully digest stuff, and I can't always do that on the fly. But I absolutely will take a look at the latest BAM app updates. If you don't know, Rose is referring to the web. I think the website is called. I will get the URL here. www.thebammap.com, all one word. If you haven't been there, check it out. Some excellent work collecting and compiling the record of the sordid tale of AMMON MCNEFF versus Reckless Ben. And Katie Lynn for $2. Pork shoulder blade sounds like a corn name. I don't know. I don't think so. I think I could come up with better names involving pork than pork shoulder blade for a corn name, but we can take that offline. So let's see. Brian Whipple for $4.99. I have a real craving for Korean barbecue today. Do you ever try any of those flavors while cooking? I love Korean barbecue. I live in a part of the world where Korean barbecue is plentiful. I myself do not cook Korean barbecue because I don't know how to do it, but I love Korean barbecue. I absolutely do. When I barbecue myself, I restrict it to Texas style barbecue, which means salt and pepper primarily, and occasionally a rub. So on the pork shoulder today, we've got salt, we've got pepper, and then from my local barbecue restaurant, they sell a pork rub that I'm trying out for the first time on it. So we'll see how that goes. It's got like some sugar and stuff like that. And Brian, thank you for the $4.99 if I didn't already say it. And I eat pomegranate for $5 Canadian. What are the chances for a trial or dismissal? I doubt Ben would sign a settlement NDA. So chances of trial, 10% or less. All civil cases, 90% of civil cases resolve before trial. So at best, a 10% chance of going to trial. What are the odds of dismissal? Right now, I would say 35 to 40%. And here's why. And I'm talking about complete dismissal. We understand they're going to file an anti-SLAPP motion, and that's going to be coming up here in a few weeks. The problem with that the anti-SLAPP motion has now is the Supreme Court came out with a ruling, and this is actually a follow-up to, I think, a super chat from my last stream. The Supreme Court recently came out with a ruling on issues where it wasn't directly touching anti-SLAPP, but it was very close to anti-SLAPP. And the basic issue is, what do you do when a state law imposes certain procedural, provides for certain procedures in a state court case, but then the case goes to federal court? And the Supreme Court, just to paraphrase, they ruled very strongly that in most instances, you're not going to be able to leverage that state statute in federal court. And so it will create some new problems with the anti-SLAPP motion. There are still things that can be handled, that can still, from that anti-SLAPP, from the Utah anti-SLAPP law, that I think are still good. One of those is the attorney fee shifting provision, which is very substantive. And I think there's a good argument that if and when Reckless Ben prevails in the lawsuit, they could get their attorney's fees. So that's pretty good. There are other things they can bring motions to dismiss on early on in the case, but I don't think that those are the types of things that are going to knock out the case in the entirety. So what I expect there to be, I still think they're going to file a motion. I still think that they're going to try to knock out as much of the civil case as they can. I think there are some parts like the RICO, I think might be more susceptible than others. But what I'm most interested in right now in terms of forcing this case to end before trial is I want to see what counterclaims Reckless Ben and Brian Mansell are going to file. I am hoping that they're going to be as forceful as they can. So in my last live stream, we talked about what I think some of those counterclaims are. I think that Reckless Ben has good arguments, especially after that video this week with AMMON MCNEFF and the Orem police. I think Reckless Ben has some really strong counterclaims for damages. I think Brian Mansell has some very strong claims to get back the value of what he's owed. He may also have some counterclaims, but I think very strongly they've got some good counterclaims they can bring, and I want to see what those look like. That is going to tell me how long I think this case is going to go. The stronger their counterclaims are, I think the more likely it's going to settle quickly, because Bricks and Minifigs is hemorrhaging money, and they don't want this fight to last very long, and they are definitely not going to want the fight to last very long if they've got what we call skin in the game, meaning they could be liable for 6 or 7 figures by Reckless Ben and Brian Mansell, and I think there's a chance they could be. So, and then the final thing from I Eat Pomegranate, I doubt Ben would sign a settlement NDA. I don't know. Maybe he would. Maybe he won't. I think usually the settlement agreements will have a confidentiality provision, and I think that Bricks and Minifigs is going to insist on an NDA because they want the bad press, the hemorrhaging from the bad press, to stop, and the only way it stops is if things die down. And so I think they're going to insist on it, and we'll see how much of a sticking point that is for Ben. Maybe Ben just cares about making sure Brian's made whole, and he's willing to negotiate on the question of an NDA. We'll see. I'm not in the room. I've never spoken to Ben, so I don't know. I don't know what's in his head, but we'll see. We'll see how that plays out. WM33776 for $2. Live Meat Temps to stream overlay when. I would have to look and see how to do that. So I would have to plug in one of my wireless meat probes. I could set that up. Okay. Let's do this. Is there a way for me to put in a poll? Okay, I'm going to start a poll. Question: do you want barbecue temp overlay? Yes or no? So you guys fill that in and answer that. If you guys want, yeah, I could probably figure out how to do that. But yeah, let's see what you guys come back with that. But yeah, thank you for the super chat on that, William. And then Dream Sigils sent 1 barbecue counselor gift membership. Thank you so much. And Chaos Sync 420 became a backyard enthusiast. Thank you so much. And stamped of approval. Bahahaha. Bam chose the hard way.com. Yeah, they chose the hard way. How simple could this have been to just sit down with Brian Mansell and figure out what it was? Like, what's the value of what was missing? And like, here's what I would have done. Let's say I had control of Bricks and Minifigs, or I was their general counsel advising them what to do. I would have advised them to do this. Sit down and talk with Brian Mansell. Figure out what happened to his sets and figure out what he was paid and give him the money. And then if it turns out we think that Chris Gorman, when we took over the business, that she held on to funds that she wasn't supposed to, then we can go after her. But don't walk into the PR mistake of fighting this poor old man. That's how I would have advised them. Now, I'm not saying that Chris Gorman did anything wrong. I'm not saying she did hold on to anything. I think there's a big question mark about what happened the night of November 14th, 2024, and what happened in the subsequent few days after that. So all I'm saying is that best practices for Bricks and Minifigs would have been to not pick a fight with the old man who's got missing Legos. So thank you for the $2 stamp of approval. And Rose Investigates. I wanted to go to Discovery, so BAM are 100% exposed. Well, oh, I'm sorry. This is Kevin Adams 1249 for is that $2.99? I'm not sure what A2.99 is, but thank you so much. I wanted to go to Discovery, so BAM are 100% exposed. Well, we might learn some of the things in Discovery, but we probably won't learn very much. This is a civil case. Most of that discovery is going to be filed under seal, under terms of a protective order, which means it can't be disseminated to the public. So we're probably not going to see very much of what happens and what they learn in Discovery. We might learn some. We'll see. Rose Investigates for $2. I heard sections 4 and 5 of Ops manual post today. All right, Rose, that's pretty awesome. So what people don't know is the Ops manual. So the Ops manual is the one document that Bricks and Minifigs has said is like our super secret operations manual. We never let it out. We never do, you know, and they've also said that their super secret operations manual is where it's written that Chris Gorman was not allowed to do a consignment agreement. I don't know if that's true. I don't even if it's in the ops manual, I don't know if that's true because I don't know how it can override the agreement she signed. I have to analyze it. But if Rose is saying that on the BAM map, some sections of that ops manual are coming out, let's see. I'll look at that and maybe I'll do a follow-up video because I've been wanting to look at that for a while. Billy Styling for $4.99. No chance they pay him a dime willingly without NDA. Everyone involved in this acts like they're allergic to Ben. Gets a 6-figure settlement and he's signing. Yeah, I tend to agree. I don't think I think the NDA is going to be probably a sticking point for Bricks and Minifigs for a settlement. They need it. They can't have look. I've been a channel for like a month and a half now. I've got some videos on this topic, criticizing AMMON MCNEFF that are 250,000, and I'm new. Think about some of the bigger channels, the huge channels that are getting millions of views off this stuff. It's a nightmare for them. It's an absolute nightmare. This is penetrating into the zeitgeist of the pop culture, and they can't have that. So I think they need an NDA. I think they'll insist on it. Stamp of approval for $2 because you have critical thinking skills. Yeah, unlike BAM. Exactly. That's why I don't want to on the fly try to analyze documents too much. I can do it a little bit, but nobody wants to see like me sitting here with my wheels turning trying to understand what some of these things means while I'm quiet because I can't talk and think at the same time. And then Julie Suker for 7122 for $4.99. Again. I think it's, is it Afraid of Lawsuits LLC versus Ammon? Another example of Ammon being butt nuts. I did see that. I've got to pull that up and look at it and see what happened there. But yeah, there was like a lawsuit called Afraid of Lawsuits that sued Ammon. Rose for $2. Thank you. The zeitgeist equals penetrated. Okay, maybe I'm not using zeitgeist in the right word. I thought zeitgeist was a noun. Are you telling me it's a verb? Okay. And then Kitty Lynn for $2. Guess I owe you $15K. Now check your Discord. Okay, I will. Okay, now I'm going to try to do something brand new on the stream. I am going to try to see how to look at a poll. Does anyone know how I look at a poll? I don't know how to pull this thing up. It's already out there, but I don't know how to see the results of the poll. Do I have a mod that knows how to work this that can help me out here? Because I'm not sure. I'm not. I started the poll, but I don't know how to see the results of the poll. Let's see. Well, hopefully one of my mods can help me out here, because I'm not sure. While we are waiting, Land Otterman 499. If they settle and Ben signs the NDA, then BAM doesn't pay him. Does the NDA still apply? The NDA would still apply. There would be a breach. You're not going to. The breach of one doesn't allow the breach of the other. Not when you're talking about confidentiality. So they will have some language in there that says the confidentiality provisions of this agreement persist through breach, through termination, et cetera, et cetera. So the confidentiality stuff will stay no matter what. And BAM purportedly breaching the payment obligations isn't going to undo the NDA. The recourse then is for Ben to file a new lawsuit for, no, you wouldn't have to file a new lawsuit. You would go back to the same judge and bring a motion for enforcement of the settlement agreement, and the judge would come down pretty hard on BAM at that point. But the practical reality is that if they settle, if they reach an agreement on a dollar amount, BAM's not going to refuse to pay him at that point. They'll pay, because otherwise why bother going through the agreement if you're just going to then stiff him? It's going to make him even worse. Dave Peterson for $10. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it. And then Tyrannosaurus Rick for $2. I love barbecues at someone else's house. Yeah, I love to cook. I never like to cook my own. So I love eating other people's barbecue. I love cooking my own barbecue, but I do not love eating my own barbecue that I cook. I think it's something about the amount of time you put into it, and you put it into it to feed others. It's inherently a selfless act, because you can never eat the amount of food that you make. And so I cook a lot of food, and then I cook it so that my family or my friends will eat it. And after you spend so much time, yeah, you have a few bites, but you're just like, I'm just glad to be done cooking. Like, it's a labor of love, but it tires you out. And I just never have a huge appetite. I do eat it, but if I go to a barbecue restaurant, I eat like heapings of barbecue. Whereas with my own food, I'll eat like a few bites to just make sure it tastes good. That's what I care about. So thank you, Tyrannosaurus Rick. And then, what is your favorite law tour? Blah, blah, blah for $2. I've got several that I follow. So my buddy Luz, I watch his stuff. I watch Lawyer You Know. I watch Emily Baker. I watch Melanie Little. I watch, okay, hold on. I'm going to forget some. So, and I don't want to forget some. I think it's a good question. Let me pull up my list of subs. Okay, so LUS, follow him. Andrea Burkhart, I follow her. Melanie Little, I like Audit the Audit. That's First Amendment stuff. BJC, I follow BJC. Brother Counsel. Clearly Established. I watch Clearly Established. I watch Bruce Rivers. I follow CoffeeZilla. Defense Diaries podcast is great. And Duty Ron. Emily Baker. Lackluster. If you haven't watched Lackluster, it's got some great stuff on American Fork. So I watch Lackluster. Lawful Masses with Leonard French. Lawyer You Know. Legal Mindset, Legal Bites. For barbecue content, if you don't follow Mad Scientist Barbecue, you should. He's a friend of mine. He's a great guy. I also follow Meat Church, but Mad Scientist Barbecue is the man. I do follow Nate the Lawyer. I I follow also uncivil law. Their stuff hasn't been as much like lawyer, like legal stuff. A lot of these folks that I got into because of the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp trial a few years ago, and then the Karen Reed trials. Like I watch a lot of the trial coverage that these folks do. Ian Runkle of the Bailey, great guy. I watch his stuff. Civil rights lawyer, watch his stuff. I love civil rights lawyer. I think that's most of the, yeah. So that's it for the law tubers I follow. So I follow quite a bit. I have been a consumer of LawTube a lot longer than I've been an actual content creator. So, and then Billy Siling for $1.99. They're going to pay him in store credit. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, wait. So I don't know if we figured out how to make the results of the chat appear. But someone was saying it was 19% no, but 82% yes. Or 82-18. All right, well, I think I could probably figure out how to do it. I have to figure out how to put an app on my screen. I do have the wireless remotes that I could do it with. I just need to see if there's a way to do it. So we'll figure out if there's a way to do that. And yeah, we could put it up in the corner. I don't know if it's that interesting. I mean, it would certainly help me when I can see the meats getting low. In fact, let me go check on this real quick. Yeah. You guys let me talk so much. I'm gonna have to. All right. Ooh, the coals have gotten cold. All right, let's see here. All right. All right, guys, I may have to use a cheat code here. I let the coals get too cold. So, I've got a leaf torch. So what does the leaf torch do? Well, it's a flamethrower. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to torch. There we go. And why did I have to do that? Because the coals have gotten so cold, because I talked my butt off too much, that the wood wasn't going to ignite. And so I had to use my cheat code. Don't try this at home, kids. I'm a licensed barbecue counselor. I know how to work a leaf burner. Colin's like, you're telling me he has a blowtorch? Yeah, I've actually got this. I've got several. This is how I lose my that big torch you saw. That's how I light most of my stuff at the beginning of my cooks, because it works very well on getting it saves a lot of time. Let's see. Just put it there. Can I use a blowtorch to clean my barbecue? You can. Yeah, you can use a blowtorch to clean your barbecue. I do. When I need to clean the inside of my barbecue, I torch it, because it crisps up things that, there's grease and stuff in there. So it torches it crisps all that stuff up, and then I can scrape it off easier. So yeah, absolutely you can. Be careful not to fuck up your thermometers though. Okay. I think we still got some super chats coming in. Uh-oh. Sorry. Todd for $2, 10 cents on the dollar store credit settlement Duplo. Nice. And then Tyrannosaurus Rick, I didn't see one mention of Andrew Bronca. I'm not sure who Andrew Bronca is. Let me know in the chats down below. So, all right. Is that may be it for super chats. So I'm looking just regular chats, Talk Air Iceland, barbecue counselor. You should try making biltong jerky, but air dried. Yeah, I wouldn't mind making jerky. It's a little different from smoking. You can smoke your meat and then you can turn it into jerky. I've never gotten into it. I do kind of want to, but I gotta have time. So, all right, folks. Well, have been going now for a little over 2 hours. So I think I'm going to wrap it up here. I appreciate everyone being here. As I mentioned before, this is a new channel. I am just getting started in this. It's it's like a month and a half old. And the amount of support that you all have shown in coming out and watching these live streams and watching all my videos is just tremendous. So, please continue to watch the videos, drop a like, drop a subscribe. If you haven't liked this live stream, please do. It looks like we've got, I'm not sure how many likes we've got. My one monitor is kind of behind, but thank you so much for everything. If you haven't, please consider becoming a channel member. We're trying to grow. We're trying to grow as much as we can, and the more I grow, the more I can do barbecue, the more I can do legal commentary and try to simplify and bring the common sense of what's going on in the complicated legal situation. So with that, I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your weekend, and I will talk to you all soon. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.